Amazing school cleaner exposes hidden genius transforming the way we learn forever. Maria Alvarez stood in the dimly lit science lab, the smell of chemicals and mold mingling in the air. Though her hands wore the scars of endless scrubbing, her mind wandered to the dusty folder she had found earlier, hidden in the cabinet, a potential goldmine of ideas about fostering creativity in STEM education. Could she do this? Was it even her place to touch such a monumental subject? She had been the underdog for too long, but now an ember of ambition sparked within her, a smoldering desire to contribute, to show that she was more than just a cleaner. Yet faces from her past intruded like unwanted shadows. Classmates who had laughed at her, whispered just a cleaner as they passed her in the hallways. Each sneer echoed in her mind, drowning out the brilliance she believed resided within her. You can't change their minds, she told herself, trembling enough to feel the broom in her hand shake as she swept one more section of the floor. An ache rose from the pit of her stomach. Was she simply a mother and a cleaner, forever relegated to the background of life? At home, Isabella and Mateo worked on their homework, passion gleaming in their young eyes. Don't give up, Maria reminded them. Hard work can break any barrier. But with every encouraging word, Maria felt the weight of her own unrealized potential pushing down on her. If she spoke up, if she claimed her voice, would it leave her children little more than a shadow of the mother they knew? They relied on her, and taking this step risked everything. The fiery spark of ambition began to dim beneath the pressure. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the monthly school board meeting approached, her pulse quickened with dread. While the folder filled her mind with ideas, the very thought of presenting to the board paralyzed her with fear. Maria had seen from afar how they dismissed anyone outside their own circles, especially someone who was just a cleaner. There was Mr. Thompson, the retired principal who always believed in her, but even his encouragement felt weighty, a reminder that her worth had to be earned, not just taken. The meeting room hummed with skepticism, and the sight of her old classmates sent icy tendrils of anxiety wrapping around her chest. What if they laughed? What if she stumbled over her words and exposed herself as unworthy? A tremor coursed through her body as the judge's cold stares met her own. She could sense them zeroing in on her, a woman fighting for acceptance, fighting to belong, but as she stood there, she felt her own rhythm falter, her mind racing through every memory of being underestimated. Would she let that history define her? Right there, in that stifling room, she realized, this isn't just about them. This is about her voice, her story. The whispers of doubt grew louder, mocking her, just a cleaner, just a mom. Her throat tightened as the urgency built. Would she risk stepping forward again, or let the fear seal her fate? The silence remained a suffocating barrier around her. As she turned to leave, the echoes of her own voice began to resonate. This was just the beginning. What would she risk next to claim the identity she had hidden for too long? The enormity of her internal struggle weighed heavy, but the journey was only beginning. The subsequent morning dawned with a renewed sense of determination. Maria awoke before the sunrise, her thoughts racing with the ideas she had gleaned from the folder. She boiled water for coffee, watching the steam rise as if it mirrored the ambitions now swirling inside her. Though the insecurity still clung to her, it felt lighter, like a garment she could choose to shed. She kept replaying her internal dialogue from the previous day as she meticulously prepared her workspace. The science lab, once a place of mere cleaning, now held potential. While scrubbing the counters, she envisioned fresh chalkboards filled with colorful equations and thoughts buzzing through the air like fireflies. It was contagious, this vision of academia she longed to be part of. Yet doubts ebbed and flowed, crashing against her resolve. The board members would scrutinize her as they always had. Could her untraditional background be perceived as a fresh perspective, or would it only deepen their skepticism? She imagined their condescending smiles, a cycle of dismissal that had haunted her since childhood. Pushing those thoughts aside, she began to formulate her presentation. Each idea in the folder ignited a thread of her youthful curiosity for learning she had suppressed all too long. As she crafted her speech, the words flowed more freely than she had anticipated. Each sentence building on experiences she could genuinely claim: motherhood, the struggle of fending for her family, and her intimate understanding of barriers in education. If she could fight through the perceptions of others, surely they could recognize her potential. After hours of silent preparation, a soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Isabella and Matteo, their eyes glistening with excitement for the day. Maria smiled, realizing she had a chance to embody those motivational words she had shared with her children. "Want to help me with something?" Maria asked, gesturing toward the scattered notes and papers on the small kitchen table. Though young, Isabella and Matteo were bright and enthusiastic. They each embraced the challenge, diving into her ideas with raw imagination. Their innocent suggestions encouraged her, revealing a younger Maria bursting with creativity yearning to be unleashed. "Why not add some pictures?" Matteo suggested. "That will make it fun for the board." "Or a story. Everyone loves a good story," Isabella added, spinning a web of possibilities around them. Maria's heart swelled. It wasn't just her thoughts now, it was theirs too, a collaboration intertwined in familial love and ambition. A budding sense of validation washed over her. Their laughter echoed like a balm on her doubts, and in those moments, she began to visualize herself standing before the board again, appropriately equipped. But the nagging sensation that this was only one step in a longer fight began to simmer within her. What if the board dismissed her despite her preparation? Beneath her soaring enthusiasm lay a chilling tremor of fear threatening to unravel the careful tapestry she began weaving. "Are you sure about this, Mama?" Matteo asked, sensing a shift in her energy. Taking a deep breath, she glanced at their worry-stricken faces. If this endeavor was born from love, how could she stand down? "I am," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm going to show them who I am." Later that evening, as she prepared for bed, dread curled around her heart. This was more than just a presentation, it was a proclamation of her worth. As she drifted off to sleep, the questions returned, challenging her resolve. The culmination of her childhood fears battled against her newfound ambition. The crossroads approached, and she could either succumb to the safety of inaction or bravely step into her potential. The following morning, something would change, and she prepared for a confrontation she now recognized was necessary. Would she confront not just the board, but the movements of her own past? With her children's voices cascading through her thoughts, Maria stepped into a world where labels could be challenged and hidden geniuses brought to light. Here, the stakes were higher than they had ever been. What awaited her in that boardroom could redefine everything. The sun rose with a tentative warmth, illuminating Maria's path as she set out for the school, each step echoing with certainty and trepidation. The crisp air filled her lungs, allowing her a moment of clarity amid the chaos of her thoughts. Today was the day. She was not just going to present, she would confront her fears head-on, making a statement not only for herself but for everyone who had been underestimated in their abilities. As she approached the imposing school building, her mind began to race with the logistics of the presentation, her carefully categorized notes, the story she had woven together for the board. Each point she aimed to articulate was sharper than any knife they could wield against her. But what if they dismissed her intentions as mere fantasies? The past lurked like a predator waiting to pounce, but Maria had become increasingly aware that the only way to escape its grasp was to face it directly. Upon entering the building, the familiar smells of cleaning products and wood filled her with a nostalgic sense of purpose. This was no longer just a classroom for her, it was an arena. Each corridor vibrated with the buzz of students, their laughter a reminder that the essence of learning was fueled by curiosity and engagement. With every step, Maria gathered momentum, step by step peeling back layers of doubt. As she held the door to the boardroom in her grasp, a moment of hesitation crept over her. Would they see her as merely the cleaner, or would they recognize the multifaceted individual behind that title? She closed her eyes, visualizing Isabella and Matteo, their encouragement echoing in her mind like a drummer setting the cadence of a march. Taking a deep breath, she entered the room, her heart pounding in her chest. The board members sat around the long table, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and indifference. It was time to reveal her hidden genius. As she started her presentation, words flowed from her like a river breaking free from winter's grasp. She spoke passionately about her innovative ideas for reform in education, intertwining her own life experiences and the transformational vision she hoped to bring forth. Yet as she reached the climax of her speech, she noticed their expressions shifting, skepticism slowly seeping back in. They acknowledged her points but barely concealed their condescension. Was her authenticity a vulnerability or a strength? Fighting the urge to withdraw, she gathered her resolve. Education is more than just metrics and schedules, she pushed back, her voice firm yet trembling slightly with the weight of the moment. It is about nurturing creativity and fostering a spirit of inquiry. Every child, regardless of background, deserves a chance to shine the same way I've learned to embrace my own potential. The silence that followed felt suffocating, stretching the moment into eternity. One member, a particularly dismissive figure with a history of belittling her efforts, coughed and leaned back in his chair, wearing an expression she had seen far too often. It was the face of dismissal, of not qualified. Within her rose a deeper fire, a desire to rebuke the narrative that sought to undermine her worth. Perhaps you all don't see me as a peer, given my position, she continued, locking eyes with him. But what I am bringing here is not about what I am or where I come from, it's approaching the untapped potential in every student. Isn't that what education really is? At that moment, a shift occurred. The board, caught off guard by her boldness, began murmuring among themselves. She had let her true self step forward, challenging not only their perceptions but the very foundation of their beliefs around education. Unsure of how they would respond, she braced herself for either rejection or acceptance. Would they embrace this unorthodox viewpoint, or would they let past biases cloud their judgment? The air felt electric with tension as the group's deliberation continued. Maria stood firm, waiting. What would their response reveal? Hidden within that moment was the possibility of redefining not only her future but the futures of countless others she fought for. The moment of decision was at hand, and Maria's heart raced with anticipation. The murmurs among the board members intensified, a relentless tide of skepticism intertwined with curiosity. Maria felt their eyes probing, dissecting her words, looking for weaknesses. The dismissive figure, still leaning back with arms crossed, was the first to break the silence. It's admirable to dream, Maria, but we need evidence data that supports such bold claims. A cleaner's perspective is unorthodox. The sting of his words ignited a wave of defiance within her. She could feel the oppressive weight of his condescension trying to pull her under, but instead, she chose to rise above it, redirecting the energy into her next response. Witnessing education from the ground level gives me a unique insight, she asserted, her voice steady. I see students disengaging, creativity stifled by traditional methods. What if we dared to challenge those methods instead of accepting them blindly? Her heartbeat synchronized with the energy in the room as she noticed the other board members shifting in their seats, the tension slowly evolving into something else. Perhaps they felt the shift too. The narrative she was weaving wasn't just about her but a call to action for all educators to reconsider their approach. Maria's mind raced with the possibilities. What if this small moment could ignite a larger fire within these walls? Education must evolve, she continued fervently. The world is changing, and so must our methods. I can introduce programs that utilize technology while preserving the human element, fostering not just rote learning but critical thinking and innovation. Isn't that what we all want? Another member, a woman with an air of respect, nodded thoughtfully. Common Core has its place, but perhaps we're focusing too narrowly? How can we expand on Maria's ideas? Maria seized the moment, heartened by the spark of interest. Imagine workshops where students collaborate on real-world problems, generating solutions that matter to them. Projects that blend creativity with critical analysis encourage ownership of their education. Isn't that the essence of learning? She paused for effect, gauging their reactions. The previously dismissive member sat straight, brow furrowed in contemplation, no longer entirely dismissive. But metrics, Maria. We need to measure success in tangible ways. Success isn't only about numbers, she countered, her resolve hardening. It's about growth, personal and intellectual. I've learned more from my failures than any passing grade could measure. If we can cultivate resilience in students, we equip them for life beyond these walls. Her rhetoric had shifted, unmistakably embodying her fervent belief that every student's voice mattered. Yet, even as enthusiasm surged within her, the specter of doubt crept back, whispering the risks of challenging the status quo. What if they saw her passion as naivete? The murmurs transformed, becoming a dialogue rather than a debate. Ideas bounced back and forth, and Maria felt her initial fear start to fade into the background. Still, the dismissive member's presence loomed large, a constant reminder of the uphill battle she faced. As discussions deepened, Maria leaned into the dialogue, weaving her personal experiences into the collective debate. She spoke of her own struggles, the path that had led her to this moment, resonating with other educators who had faced adversity. Gradually, the board members began to engage with her experiences as evidence rather than resistive markers of her position. Maria could feel their skepticism dissipating, replaced by a tentative hope. Acceptance began to form in the cracks of their skepticism, yet lingering underneath was the fear of the unknown. As the meeting stretched on, Maria watched them consider her ideas, a turbulent mix of anticipation and anxiety swirling within her. The dialogue could pivot in any direction, but she was ready for the challenge. Suddenly, one of the members, an elder man known for his steadfast views, stood up. His voice resonated throughout the room. "Maria, I believe you've struck a chord with us. But you must understand, this isn't just about what you want. It's about what we're willing to change." Her determination surged once more, fueled by the weight of significance in his words. Change was an invitation, a process. "I understand completely," she replied, "but now is the moment to act. Challenge can only happen when we step outside our comfort zones." As the board deliberated her response, Maria felt the energy in the room shift again, a palpable current sparking around her. She had crossed a threshold from vulnerability to empowerment, a transformation she had yearned for. But as ideas exchanged and her chances hung in the balance, an unexpected thought emerged. What if they approved her ideas, only to impose conditions that undermined their essence? The next moments would define not just her fate but the opportunity to reshape the very fabric of their educational institution. Would she accept a diluted version of her vision, safety net in place, or could she demand that they embrace creativity and authenticity, a true reform? The room stilled as she awaited the board's decision, each breath a measured anticipation of transforming an educational paradigm. How would they respond to her plea for authenticity in a world defined by metrics? The room held its breath as Maria's mind raced against the ticking clock of opportunity. The elder member's assertion hung heavy in the air, it felt like a gauntlet thrown at her feet. Would she bend to the expected norms, or push against the barricades that had long stifled true creativity in education? She took a breath, her thoughts crystallizing into a decision, the decision to confront complacency. "While I understand the need for metrics," she began, her voice now resonating with a clarity she hadn't anticipated, "we must also recognize that the most profound learnings are often intangible." She scanned the faces before her, the newfound spark of interest flickering in their eyes, as if she were igniting something dormant within them. "What if we combine traditional metrics with qualitative assessments?" she proposed. "We could integrate student portfolios, personal reflections, and group projects as evaluations of progress. Let us not shy away from numbers, but rather enhance them with stories of growth." In that moment, she felt a surge of power within her, the culmination of her personal journey flooding her with resolve. Her life experiences, the countless hours spent mopping floors, managing a busy household, and raising children in the chaotic confines of her community, had granted her insights that remained unvoiced for too long. Each anecdote she shared transformed from mere memories to pillars of her argument, proof that understanding the student experience was, in itself, a form of evidence. The board members shifted again, some whispering among themselves, nodding slightly, as if each suggestion she articulated was planting seeds of curiosity and reconsideration. The dismissive member finally straightened, leaning in slightly, a clear change in his posture signaling engagement rather than skepticism. "And what would a pilot program look like?" he challenged, still displaying his guarded demeanor but seemingly willing to entertain the possibilities. "The program would start small," Maria proposed quickly, seizing the opportunity to provide clarity. "We could initiate a few classrooms within our school, gradually collecting data on both performance and the qualitative impacts on student engagement. Teachers would be key partners in this." As she spoke, she could feel the tide of the meeting turning, a slow boat gaining momentum amidst the waves of doubt. It no longer felt confrontational. Instead, it resembled a collaborative brainstorming session where ideas merged into a collective vision. Yet, underneath that current of excitement, a simpering fear lurked. What if she didn't have all the answers? Her thoughts pulled her back again. Underneath all this fervent energy and engagement was a haunting thought: did she truly believe they would embrace this radical shift? Or was she merely forging naive paths through an entrenched bureaucracy, determined to anchor her vision further? Maria placed the onus of transformation in the minds of the board members. Imagine a school where students feel safe to fail, where failure isn't a scarlet letter but a badge of honor that leads them to growth. If we can create that environment, we forge resilient learners ready to face an uncertain future. Lifting her gaze to the elder man, she punctuated her words with a deep conviction that shivered through her as she spoke. "We must take risks, but we must do it together. I am prepared to lead this initiative. Will you stand with me?" The tension seemed to thicken in the air. One by one, the board members exchanged glances, silently grappling with her proposition. The dismissive man, now less so, rubbed his chin thoughtfully, while the elder member crossed his arms, contemplating the horizon of possibilities Maria painted. But before the murmurings could escalate again, a new voice rose amongst them, one of hesitance and challenge. "And what happens when these ideas clash with the funding and regulations we have to adhere to?" The moment hung achingly between discouragement and determination, as Maria looked around. This was it, the moment she would either be cast aside or embraced as the catalyst for change. Her mind flipped through the scenarios, each one more vivid than the last. "Then we create the conversation around the regulations," she countered firmly, adrenaline racing through her veins. "We advocate for what we believe in, even if it means facing opposition. If we don't push the boundaries, we risk stagnation for our students." The distant sound of a clock ticking urged her thoughts to march onward. Those uncertainties were now her fuel. When the room remained silent, a slow tide of resolve filled her. Yes, the path was fraught with complications and a myriad of what-ifs. But perhaps that was part of the evolution. As she clenched her fists, she understood this meeting held more than academic potential. It held her future, her unrefined ambition suspended between chaos and clarity. Did she have the strength to lead them into this new era, or would she flounder amidst presiding doubts? With a final glance around the room, she squared her shoulders, ready to meet the challenge head-on. Let us create a pilot program that changes lives, not just metrics. Who is ready for this leap with me? The ponderous silence persisted, but a subtle shift of energy hinted that the moment of decision was imminent. The stakes had never been higher, and as Maria held her breath, she could only wonder, would they embrace transformation, or would another opportunity drift away, lost to the tide of hesitance? Outside, the world moved indifferently on, unaware of the pivotal moment captured within those walls. Yet for Maria, the confrontation with doubt and the call for courage lurked close, and a new realization dawned upon her: sometimes, the greatest battles are those fought both within and outside. The silence stretched endlessly, an aching weight that bore down on Maria's shoulders. Each board member's gaze felt like a spotlight, magnifying her anxiety. In this moment of ambiguity, she grasped the crux of her challenge. The fight was not solely against established norms but also against her inner monologue, the paradox of fear mingling with ambition. With a resolute breath, Maria broke the stillness, her voice stronger than she felt. I understand we face significant hurdles: funding, compliance, ingrained habits. But if we let caution dictate our actions, we risk condemning our students to a stagnant education, one that thwarts their potential. The fervor in her tone echoed her own battle for validity, a reflection of years spent contending not just with circumstances outside her control but with the self-doubt that shadowed her every move. One by one, the board members pondered her words. With each tick of the clock, Maria wrestled with doubt: had she overreached? The elder member's penetrating gaze seemed to analyze her resolve down to its core. Was she equipped to galvanize this collective will into action? He finally broke the silence, his voice a gravelly whisper laden with inevitability. What you're proposing this isn't just ambitious, it's revolutionary. The wall of hesitance began to crumble, revealing a crack of possibility. But what about the naysayers who dwell within our network? Let us transform them into advocates, Maria urged before she fully recognized what she was saying. The audacity of her claim roared to life, igniting a spark of boldness she hadn't fully owned before. We can host workshops demonstrating the benefits of a holistic approach. Let us involve parents, community leaders, and even the students themselves to surface their stories. If they witness the positive effects firsthand, they'll be equipped to sway skeptics. As her ideas unfolded, something shifted inside Maria. She wasn't just advocating for change, she was crafting her own narrative, threading her experiences into every proposal. The vision of an educational environment where creativity flourished wasn't purely theoretical, it was an embodiment of her struggles, her aspirations, and the community she cherished. Yet, a fleeting shadow whispered fears of inadequacy. Would her lack of formal power betray her efforts? She quelled that doubt with the reminder of her journey. It was the grit formed from hardship that granted her insights, that potential which had always simmered beneath the surface. The dismissive member, intrigue growing in his expression, pondered aloud, suppose we agree to this pilot program. How do we ensure its authenticity and measure its success? The weight of his scrutiny pushed Maria to articulate more than just passion, it required a coherent strategy. Success can be multifaceted, she replied, summoning her thoughts into a cohesive plan. We could establish clear criteria that blend qualitative and quantitative outcomes. We'll track engagement levels, gather student feedback, and observe changes in classroom dynamics, fostering an adaptive environment informed by these insights. Realization dawned upon her: this was not merely a professional endeavor, it was deeply personal. This journey could redefine how she saw herself within the landscape of education. The alignment of heart and intellect formed an internal alliance she hadn't fully acknowledged before. Could this be her hidden strength? The board members exchanged glances, a palpable shift surging through the room. Seeds of possibility were germinating, sprouting in the fertile ground cultivated by her unwavering conviction. Then, simmering tension arose as the elder member added, and what about external pressures? The critics who will inevitably arise can cast shadows over our efforts. Yes, Maria acknowledged, her heart racing. Let us confront them head-on. We'll organize forums that invite open discussion, addressing concerns and sharing successes, transforming critiques into an exchange of ideas rather than weapons of opposition. The air crackled with energy, awash with the thrill of a battle yet to be fought. Yet, as anticipation flickered, Maria questioned her readiness. Had she sufficiently prepared to face an army of critics, or would uncertainty eclipse her resolve when challenged? As their conversation rekindled, twisting and turning with every new idea, Maria felt herself preparing for the duel ahead. She had summoned her courage, but would she maintain it against the inevitable struggles? Did her burgeoning confidence have the stamina to weather the onslaught that lay ahead? With her heart pounding, she realized the answer was more than a mere hope, it was a testament to her potential. Her path was beginning to unfold, yet shadows of doubt lingered. What would her journey truly cost her? As the meeting drew to a close, Maria's fate hung suspended in the balance, the next steps looming like specters on the horizon. The true test awaited, and as she stood at the edge of this precipice, she understood, the battle for transformation had only just begun. But now, her focus sharpened with grit, she was ready to step forward, not knowing whether triumph or tribulation would follow. What awaited her in the corridors of power, and what hidden barriers would she need to dismantle next? The tension thickened again, and as hope flickered brighter within her, a storm brewed on the horizon, brimming with both challenge and opportunity. The next day, as sunlight poured through her bedroom window, Maria stared at her reflection in the mirror with a mix of determination and trepidation. Today was the day she would present her proposal at the teachers' union meeting. Armed with new insights and a sharper resolve, she wondered how many hearts and minds could she shift in a room suffused with skepticism. Arriving at the meeting, the rustle of papers and the low murmur of conversations edged her closer to the deeply rooted fear she had fought against. The atmosphere was thick with years of tradition, seasoned educators who may have never entertained her vision of transformation. She felt like an outsider bearing a treasure trove of untested ideas to seasoned guardians of the status quo. With a small contingent of sympathizers among the crowd, Maria took a deep breath and stepped forward. The chatter dwindled, and her voice filled the silence. Thank you all for gathering. I know we face many challenges and that change can seem like an overwhelming endeavor. However, the very future of our students hinges on our collective willingness to innovate. She glanced across the rows of seated teachers, faces creased with skepticism. They were veterans of countless ideological battles, and she mustered every ounce of energy to harness their attention. Imagine fostering an environment where creativity and critical thinking are not just encouraged, but celebrated. What if we could deliver education that resonates with the unique talents and aspirations of each student? As she spoke passionately, Maria could feel a few nodding heads in agreement, while others remained resolute in their doubt. Just as she felt a bloom of encouragement, a voice rose from within the crowd, cutting through her momentum like a jagged blade. And how do you plan on addressing the academic standards? You can't just throw those out the window. The question, sharp and pointed, echoed through her mind. The board meeting had armed her with a host of answers, yet in this setting, she felt the weight of scrutiny magnify. Instead of recoiling, Maria recognized a spark of opportunity. In her mind, she chose to confront it as a catalyst for dialogue instead of a barrier. Of course, academic standards are crucial. But what if we weave those expectations into a framework that respects the individual learning process? Authentic engagement in subject material can yield superior results. She noticed a few heads turn slightly, as if intrigued despite themselves. Maria pressed on, conscious of how easily doubt can derail her trajectory. She detailed her holistic approach, proposing methodical workshops that would allow educators to experience the benefits firsthand. As she laid out her plan, a soft ripple of acknowledgement flickered in the assembly, fractures cracking the seemingly impermeable walls against her ideas. Yet doubt still loomed large. A part of her felt exposed. What if her ambition outpaced her own competencies? The meeting continued, challenging questions emerging that tested her resolve. Each inquiry grabbed her mind and forced her to probe deeper into her intentions. What will happen to the students who don't fit into your mold? Another teacher challenged. Each person became a mirror, reflecting the fears that had haunted her for so long. Could she genuinely fulfill her vision without alienating those at the fringes of her framework? As the discussion circled back and forth like an exhausting game of chess, a realization struck her. It was not solely about creative approaches to teaching, it was a trial of her ability to articulate her beliefs while addressing the fears of others. She was not just negotiating ideas, but rather weaving a social fabric of trust, a journey that asked her to bridge the gap between ambition and realism. With the final challenge echoing in her mind, Maria felt the urgency settle in her gut. How could she persuade her colleagues when doubts clouded her own heart? It was time to find her resolution, to allow vulnerability to coexist with her growing confidence. The meeting Approached its conclusion, Maria's mind raced with strategies to solidify her newfound authority. She had embarked on a personal quest, but now she saw the clear path ahead illuminated with passion and doubt alike. Would she step across that threshold of risk and convince her peers that transformation was worth the cost? Did she possess the emotional bandwidth to navigate their concerns while solidifying her place as a leader? The room fell silent, the air charged with anticipation, marking the pivotal moment of truth. But just as she was gathering her resolve for a closing remark, the door swung open, and in walked a figure everyone recognized, a longtime critic of educational reform. Would this unexpected entrance derail her mission, or would it catalyze an even greater challenge that she had to meet head-on? The moment hung in the air, poised on the brink of confrontation and evolution. As the door creaked open, all eyes shifted toward the newcomer, an authoritative figure with a reputation for dismantling reformist ideologies. Maria's heart raced, her previous surge of confidence dissipating into a cloud of uncertainty. She had pictured this moment for days, her colleagues actually rallying around her ideas. Yet now, the specter of this antagonist loomed large, poised to challenge everything she had fought for. The critic, Mr. Weston, strode confidently to the front, his expression a blend of skepticism and curiosity. He had led many meetings with a firm hand, advocating for a rigid adherence to standardization in education. "I couldn't help but overhear some of your dialogue," he began, addressing Maria directly. "Your vision is intriguing, but you must understand the importance of academic consistency. Life is not built on ideals, it's shaped by measurable outcomes." Maria sensed her palms sweating, her mind racing to find a compelling counterargument while simultaneously battling the flashbacks of long-forgotten self-doubt. She wiped her hands on her trousers, steadying herself. This confrontation was exactly the battleground she needed, a chance to refine her own beliefs under pressure. Mr. Weston would argue that a measured outcome cannot truly reflect a student's potential if it does not account for individual learning styles, she replied, feeling a rush of adrenaline. Too often, we box our students into a standardized curriculum that stifles creativity and the love of learning. The room buzzed with murmurs. Some teachers, her supporters, nodded, others seemed to take a step back. The tension was palpable, like a fracture line waiting to split the earth beneath them. "What about students who need structure?" he pressed, eyebrows raised, voice unwavering. "Are you prepared to sacrifice rigor for whimsy?" His words stung, calling into question not just her proposal but her very commitment to the educational standards she had once cherished. Rigor and structure had always been integral to her approach. Would her proposal ignore those crucial elements, leading her down a path of chaos? She took a moment to recalibrate her thoughts. It was not whimsy she sought to implement, but an enriched framework that embraced diversity in learning. Rigor can coexist with creativity, Mr. Weston. We can establish standards that encourage student-driven inquiry while simultaneously driving academic excellence. It's not about abandoning the structure, but redefining it to better serve our students. As she spoke, fervor painted her words with conviction, transforming her trepidation into passion. Maria watched as expressions shifted. Some teachers appeared contemplative, contemplating the possibility of a classroom where authentic engagement triumphed over rote memorization. Weston remained impassive, his features betraying nothing. "And what about those students who struggle? Will your innovation leave them behind?" The question hung in the air, and Maria could feel a tightening source of dread pooling in her stomach. The truth was, she had never chalked out a plan for every conceivable pitfall. What if her vision failed to address those who needed the most support? She would not allow herself to falter. "Every framework I propose includes specific strategies to effectively support those students, Mr. Weston. Instead of discarding them as anomalies, we can tailor our methods to ensure they too thrive in a creative learning environment." The energy in the room shifted yet again. Some of her colleagues began whispering amongst themselves, eyes glinting with a mix of uncertainty and curiosity. Perhaps they recognized the genuine concern underlying her ambition. But would it be enough? Would her proposal survive this confrontation, or was it simply a dream bound to crumble under pressure? As Maria held her breath, waiting for Weston's response, she felt a surge within her, a newfound clarity that she had not anticipated. She realized that every moment she had spent doubting her path was unfurling into a different kind of strength. It was time to lean fully into this headwind. The stakes demanded it. And with that clarity came a realization: she was prepared to confront any challenge head-on, even if it felled her. The hesitation that had marred her ambition was ready to wane, metamorphosing into an opportunity for profound growth. As Weston opened his mouth to speak, Maria braced herself, knowing this spoke to more than just an argument. It was the crucible of her transformation as an educator and a leader. Would this be the moment that defined her potential, or the one that pushed her too far from her peers? With anticipation hanging thick in the air, every heart in the room seemed to beat in unison, awaiting the answer that would change everything. Weston cleared his throat, a glimmer of bemusement crossing his features. "You pose a compelling argument, Ms. Maria, but the pressure remains on you. What does this new framework entail, and how exactly will it address the diverse needs of every student?" His voice surged with authority, purposefully mesmerizing the crowd. As he spoke, Maria felt as if each word landed like a weight on her shoulders. She had rehearsed her plan, meticulously crafting comprehensive strategies for students with varying needs, but the intensity of the moment made it hard to recall specifics. The room shifted around her, colors blurring, the din of murmuring voices fading into a muffled thrum. She could feel the stakes crystallizing in her chest, a solid knot of nerves demanding action. "Let's take collaborative projects, for example," she began, gathering her thoughts as best she could. "By allowing students to choose their teams based on interests, we create a learning environment that respects individual agency while still enforcing essential academic concepts. Differentiated instruction methods can target student needs through tailored resources, whether it's hands-on activities for kinesthetic learners or multimedia presentations for visual learners. Each methodology would maintain the integrity of our academic goals without compromising creativity." Her voice gained momentum, unfolding like a coast unfurling before an incoming tide. As she spoke, there was something transformative in her delivery. It was no longer just about defending her proposal, but unveiling a vision she had once thought merely a flicker of hope. She began to see how interactivity ignited engagement, and how mutual support among students could foster resilience in even the most challenged learners. Weston's demeanor shifted, skepticism flickering for just a moment into curiosity. Yet, his incredulity quickly returned, and he leaned forward, folding his arms. "But isn't the real concern how many of these ideas can be successfully implemented? Many have fallen short in execution, and ultimately, outcomes are what we're judged by." Doubt surged through her, mingling with the resolve she had gained. Maria felt the historical weight of previous educators' failures press against her resolve. How many had proposed revolutionary ideas only to have them dismantled by the system's rigidity? She took a deep breath, centering herself. "Then let us redefine how we measure success. Instead of solely relying on standardized testing, let us incorporate more holistic evaluations, such as project-based assessments, peer reviews, and portfolios that highlight individual strengths. Embracing a broader spectrum of performance indicators can illuminate true student potential, showing their growth rather than merely their position relative to others." With each point made, Maria was acutely aware of the subtle shifts around her. Whispers among colleagues had turned into somewhat hushed observations, their expressions shifting from skepticism to contemplation. The sight was intoxicating, the tide was beginning to turn, yet the back of her mind gnawed with resignation. What if somehow, despite her clarity, Weston found a way to nullify her points? What if he grasped at her suggestions as hollow, merely sounding good in theory? It made her head spin. As Weston contemplated her last statement, his expression somewhat softening, Maria seized the moment to reinforce her commitment. "I believe in the potential of every student. I will contend with this challenge not just here with you today but also in classrooms where these strategies take root. I am prepared to gather data, reflect on practices, adjust as needed, and even face failure as part of this journey." Is it not the signs of a true educator to learn and adapt? A moment passed, silent yet charged, filled with lingering uncertainty before Weston finally spoke, his voice even. "You speak of adaptability, Maria. But what if you were to encounter unyielding resistance from colleagues who are entrenched in the old ways? How would you navigate that?" The question fell like a lightning bolt, its charge propelling a rush of potential challenges into her mind. This wasn't just about overcoming criticism, it was an invitation to build genuine connections, establish trust, and perhaps even challenge the dogma she had accepted as an educator. Maria felt her body tense, the familiar ache of doubt panging sharply. Did she have strategies prepared for the inevitable oppositions she would face? It wasn't just a matter of developing new frameworks, it was about creating an entire culture around learning. "Then perhaps," she replied slowly, her voice steadying, "the time has come for me to build deeper relationships grounded in mutual respect, to forge alliances with those willing to grow, even if the road is fraught with tension. Transformative progress requires collective will." Weston's gaze darkened, a glimmer of admiration now accompanying his criticism. The stakes were higher than before, every word exchanged had cemented Maria's tenacity, yet a new question lingered: could she truly sway her peers who had devoted their careers to maintaining the status quo? Maria held on to the moment, feeling the pulse of determination rising within her. She could forge a new path, but it would demand more courage than she had ever anticipated, not just personally but institutionally as well. As the air grew dense with tension and anticipation, another voice broke through, echoing from the back of the room. "But can we trust that your framework is not just theoretical? Can it stand the storm of critical scrutiny?" In that instant, Maria understood, this was no longer just about a proposal. This was the proving ground for her vision, a crucible testing her resolve, and the moment had arrived for her to decide how far she was willing to go to make it real. How ready was she to enter the battle for true educational reform? The next chapter was poised to begin, a confrontation not only with Weston and her colleagues but with herself, her beliefs, her strategies, and her willingness to accept both support and opposition. The answer to that would shape everything. Maria Alvarez stood tall, a newfound vigor surging through her after the tumultuous meeting. The dusty folder that had once served as a mere reminder of her limitations had now transformed into a solid foundation for navigating the future of education. Inside her, the undercurrent of anxiety ebbed away, replaced by a powerful conviction. She had faced the board members and her colleagues with clarity and purpose. She had confronted not only the skepticism of others but also the doubts that had lingered deep within her. As she left the meeting room, the echo of her words hung in the air, a declaration of her worth and a challenge to the status quo. The waves of resistance that had once appeared insurmountable now seemed merely ripples in a much larger ocean of possibility. Maria felt herself unfolding, like a flower that had finally found the sunlight after years of being in the shadows. Over the following weeks, Maria transformed her vision into tangible actions. She met regularly with the supportive teachers, forming a coalition that championed the educational reforms she opined were necessary. Together, they planned workshops that showcased the potential of integrating creativity with standard curricula. Each week brought more progress, students becoming more engaged as they learned to think critically and collaborate in ways that demonstrated true ownership of their education. One afternoon, she gathered her group of teachers to discuss feedback from their pilot program. Students were thriving. "Look at these portfolios," Maria said, excitement bubbling in her voice as she showcased the vibrant projects. "These aren't just assessments, they're individual stories of growth and resilience." Each success story ignited a spark of unity among her colleagues, a shared appreciation for progress that had once been overshadowed by conversations of apathy and routine. The skeptics among the board had gradually transformed their rhetoric, softening in their tone. Even Mr. Weston had begun to show signs of measured acceptance, attending meetings without the usual air of hostility. "Your strategies require not only vision but courage," he said one day, acknowledging her growth. Reflecting on the change in his demeanor quenched the last flicker of self-doubt that had once plagued her. She was no longer simply the cleaner, she was a leader in education. Maria's confidence began to ripple throughout the school as she became increasingly involved in teaching workshops and coaching her peers. She shared practical insights on fostering innovation, life lessons intertwined with pedagogical techniques, igniting real dialogue about student engagement. At the culmination of the semester, the board voted unanimously to implement her programs across the district, a resounding testament to her hard work and passion. The night of the announcement was a momentous occasion. As the board members celebrated the reform initiatives at a dinner event, Maria received recognition for her contributions. Standing before an audience, the crowd applauding her achievements, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. They weren't just clapping, they were celebrating transformation, acknowledging the power of collective action spurred by individual courage. Isabella and Matteo beamed with pride as they watched their mother's journey from the brink of surrender to a position of influence. Maria had not merely redefined her role, she had rewritten her family narrative. She was now a beacon of inspiration, teaching her children that barriers could be broken and dreams pursued without the need for permission. As the recognition continued to pour in, Maria was invited to conferences, sharing her insights and experiences with passionate educators around the country. The label of cleaner melted away, replaced by titles like educational reformer and innovative educator, affirming her competence and value in the field. In the heart of it all, Maria understood that this journey was not simply a career achievement, it was a personal renaissance. With her voice finally realized, the whispers of doubt that once filled her mind dimmed into silence. She embraced her identity, satiated and proud, standing tall in her fields of accomplishment, ready to inspire others to transcend their labels, knowing firsthand that everyone held a hidden genius waiting to be uncovered. Now, the time has come to take action. You need to subscribe now to this channel and not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover transformative tales. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful transformation. This is the moment to show your support for stories of personal overcoming.